All right. Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I left a few links down in the description. I came across a YouTube channel that was talking about the home prices now moving so far above the household incomes that there's like no way that the affordability of homes is anywhere near present levels is going to be achievable for the average household income. And so when I think about the affordability crisis when it's taken place now and how that's going to impact the rest of the economy when it comes to the average everyday worker, the ability to move into a home is like this American dream, and not being able to achieve it is very much a crisis situation for a lot of people out there. And when you think about even a good job is not enough to get into a average everyday home, what is it that people could possibly do to correct the situation? And I think correcting the situation is going to be a very difficult task. Understanding what it is that's taking place right now gives us a much better ability to then figure out what it is that we need to do in order to create the environment that we are looking for, whether it's moving into a house or just trying to get into the ability to be that entrepreneur that buys rental properties or something of that nature. Just kind of understanding the situation for what it is as opposed to what needs to happen is going to give you the ability to deal with the situation in its current form. Now, a lot of you know that I study the Cantillon essay. I listen to a lot of economic research that a lot of people have now come to their understanding is a cause for the current situation. When I notice from Cantillon effect that most things that people are witnessing is an underlying economic force. So ultimately, people who are studying the economy look at symptoms as the problem, and the problem really is an underlying economic force that has been stated literally hundreds of years ago. So as I go through the Cantillon essay and I think about how it is that money separates the rich from the poor, and it's not just having money, it's the increase of new money. New money constantly pouring into a particular economy or a state or a country or however you want to look at it. When that new money comes in, there is going to be a separation that takes place, no matter what. If Cantillon can describe it from hundreds of years ago, then there's no point in reinventing the wheel. We know that there is no way that we can reverse course without some serious pain that's going to be felt amongst the entire population as the new money needs to churn off in order for there to be a easier way for everybody out there to get into their property ownership, because ultimately what it comes down to is the people who have access to the new money, when they spend that new money into the economy, what they are going to do is create a supply demand imbalance. And it's very important to understand that, because most people will look at the new money coming in and say, oh, they're creating this for their political pull or to enslave the people, or they'll do like all kinds of stuff. I don't know. You just kind of fill in the blanks on whatever it is, conspiratorial mindset you want to put in there. But it's an underlying economic force, no matter how you look at it. Like, I mean, whether it came from a silver mine, like Cantillon tries to describe in his essay of how the new money comes in, or whether it comes from production. Like the United States used to be a manufacturing powerhouse. So if you're producing the world's greatest stuff and you're sending that stuff out there to the world, what are you going to get? You're going to get new money coming in. So when that new money comes in, the people who have first access to it get to enjoy that new money. Well, who has first access to the money if you are producing stuff and sending it out there to the world, right? The working class individual is getting first access to that money, and then they get to increase their standard of living on account of that. Well, if the new money that's coming into the United States isn't necessarily coming from silver mine production, but coming from the exploiting of the world's gold and silver mines by producing the world's greatest stuff and then sending it out to the world, and the world was sending us their gold. That's like a fair exchange, right? I mean, they put time, effort, and energy into extracting the gold, and we put time, effort, and energy into building wonderful, beautiful products to send to them. This is a fair exchange, but the problem starts to come when you have exchanged so much of your goods and services that you have taken all the gold from their mines or their their reserves or whatever you want, their pockets. There you go. And you have now got all their gold. Now they can't buy any more stuff from you, and that's going to be a real problem, especially if you're a producing, saving nation that is producing stuff, getting new money in from that production, and now you have all the new money because you have acquired all the gold. What is it you're going to end up doing? You're going to have to relinquish that gold back out there to the rest of the world, and that's going to be an incredibly painful experience. I mean, just kind of think about getting laid off, right? It's kind of the same thing, only different. It's on a grand scale, and it's the country that's going to be suffering that as a whole. So now here we have a problem that we now face that's an underlying economic force. It's not anybody's fault that we were really, really good at what we were doing, producing all the world's greatest stuff and then getting all the world's gold and then increasing our standard of living. It sounds like a great deal, and I mean, I'm down for it. Let's make that happen. The only problem is that we have to understand that we are going to eventually deprive the rest of the gold or the rest of the world of the gold in order to do the transactions to buy our stuff. So how do we solve that problem? We need the ability to do transactions, and central banking system says here we are. We can give you the ability to do all the transactions you could ever possibly imagined. And when the economy is getting really, really hot and all that gold is getting concentrated to the hands of a few, well, we can keep the transactions going by issuing out fiat currency. Isn't that a swell thing? So that you don't have to slow down on your business cycle and you can just keep ever expanding. And we promise we won't print too much. Or they do, and then they do, and then now you got a problem because they have done printed too much money to do all these transactions that everybody really, really wanted to do. So now how do you deal with the fact that this is the problem, right? I mean, this is really it. When you think about how it is that new money comes into the system, how do you get that new money into the system? Well, you can do it by producing something. You can produce gold out of a silver gold mine. You can produce stuff. You can go and fight wars and just take it from them, or you could issue out a lot of debt. We can promise to pay into the future. And now that promise to pay into the future, well, that's essentially what the United States decided to do back in the early 70s when Nixon was just like, hey, we can't do this whole gold standard thing anymore because really, if you all ask for the gold back, we're going to go broke and we're going to be some poor, miserable people. And that doesn't sound like the plan that we're going to go down. So instead, what we're going to do is sever ourselves from the gold standard and issue out U.S. Treasuries in place of gold. That's a pretty good deal too, right, everybody? And everybody was like, no, that's not a good deal. We do not want that. That's not what we are intending on doing, and we're going to essentially just go ahead and give up on the dollar. How does that sound to you, Nixon? And everything started going haywire, especially for, the Carter administration, who was having a hell of a time trying to figure out what it is that they are going to do with issuing out U.S. Treasury debt that nobody really wanted. Like, they were like, screw you, United States. You severed yourselves from the gold standard. You should have stayed on the gold standard and honored your debt. But no, you're just going to issue us promise to pay into the future. And old Carter, man, he was stuck in a bad place. He was just like, how do we deal with this? And the U.S. Treasury was just like, well, we can promise to pay in the U.S. Treasuries inside of German marks and, Swiss francs, because that still seems to have some sort of confidence behind it. And there it was, the United States was issuing out treasury debt that was due in a foreign currency. Can you imagine that stuff? People don't believe me. Look it up. They're called Carter bonds, right? And this is the situation that the United States was truly facing back in the day. So now here, how is it you're going to solve this problem that nobody really had any confidence in the United States because they done severed themselves from the gold standard? And they're going all the way down to the point that they're having to issue out U.S. Treasury debt due in a foreign nation because nobody really trusted the dollar at that point. And inflation's running hot and everybody's just like, screw you. And oh man, it was just a really bad time. So what did old Paulson do? He was just like, let's shove this thing up to a high interest rate and just convince everybody that the U.S. is the only place to be, since there really is no other place to be. And if there's nobody else who's going to be issuing out the amount of treasury debt that's going to be, like like a country willing to go into debt as much as the United States is going to be willing to do, who's going to compete? Nobody. So let's do it, right? And so Paulson go ahead and shove that thing up to the 15% on the U.S. Treasuries, and people are out there going, oh crap, I mean, 15% yield on a U.S. Treasury debt? I mean, that's pretty good. Think about that for just a second, right? A 15% return on a 10-year Treasury. You had $1 million back in the early 80s. You lent it to the United States government, which again, a lot of people didn't trust back in the day because, they just done severed themselves from the gold standard. But if you did happen to trust them enough and you got a 15% yield on a 10-year Treasury guaranteed return from the U.S. government, $1 million would yield you $150,000 a year. That was a pretty dang good return. Do you think there were some people out there willing to jump into that? I mean, I'm guessing there was. So here you had a situation in which that the United States was a manufacturing powerhouse producing the world's greatest stuff, sending that stuff out there to the world. The world was sending us their money. The people who had first access to that money were the producer savers, and they were producing and saving themselves into a higher standard of living, only to find that higher standard of living was making it very difficult for the domestic producers to compete against the foreign producers out there who are now competing with a much cheaper product that they could get into the United States, and the United States was going to be like, oh crap, here we go, we're going to lose our manufacturing and our new money. How is that supposed to work? How are you going to continue to manufacture, distribute that stuff out there to the world when the world is like, hey, guess what? We're producing it for ourselves now. Ha ha. Sucks to be you. We don't need your expensive crap, United States. We're building cheap crap here in China. So now how the United States going to get new money in? It's going to be very difficult. The only way to bring new money in is to either, right, produce something, right, go to war. Well, I mean, that kind of works sometimes, right? Or you go and issue out a lot of debt. And so the United States started going into that debt issuance. And if we go into debt issuance, now we can buy the production of the world. Now, this is something that's very interesting to think about, because if you're going to be buying the production of the world, what is the world buying from you? The debt, right? U.S. Treasury debt. So if you are not buying the production of the world is not buying your debt, now you have a problem. Now the United States economy is built off of the idea that we are going to sell the world U.S. Treasury debt and then buy their production. We have become a debt-based, consumer-based economy. That is not the same thing as a producer-saver economy. People want to say, how is it that we can return back to the idea that the average working-class individual can own a home? You can't. It doesn't work like that anymore because we don't produce and save like we once did back in the day when we were a manufacturing powerhouse. That was a whole different way of getting new money in. We get new money in from this debt issuance, and debt issuance means that people who have first access to it, which is the debt issuance, then go into buying the asset prices, which is driving the asset prices up, and then you go to work every day wondering why it is that you can't compete, because you're competing for new money by working an hourly job while other people are getting new money in by borrowing it. You see the difference inside of how easy it is for some people to get the new money and how difficult of a road you're taking in order to acquire the new money? Think about that for just a second. This is why the wedge is driven so deep. Why it is that an average working class individual can't buy a house. That doesn't make any sense. Who's buying the houses if the average everyday working class person isn't doing it? Well, it's probably the institutional investors who have access to the new money. And then they're going to rent that place out to you because you're working class and can't afford to buy a house. This is the situation we now live in because the new money that you are acquiring comes from trading your time for dollars, where the other people who are buying the assets are literally borrowing the money to do it. They don't trade their time in dollars for it. They then take that asset and rent it out to you who's trading time in dollars for it, and you wonder why this wedge is getting so wide? There's nothing you can really do to change the situation. See, the problem that really faces is that there was a time when you could have built your own home. You know that, right? Like, that wasn't even that long ago. I mean, there was a time when I was a young man, at 18 years old, there was still people who were constructing their own home. right? I graduated high school in 1995. It was the very end of this sort of era. Nowadays, it's very, very rare that an individual says, okay, I'm going to go and buy a small plot of land and I'm going to build my nice little home on side of this plot of land. It happens. Don't get me wrong. There are people who do it, but how infrequent is it now? Very, right? Hardly anybody goes this route. And because of that, there's less homes out there for sale. Well, if there's less homes out there for sale because you can't build one, then there's going to be a limitation of them. You wonder why institutional investors say, okay, hey, if there is a supply crunch, right, because people literally just don't build their own homes anymore, then there's going to be demand for those homes. And if you go and take even increasing amounts of it off the supply, then you're going to find prices moving up. And again, do you think those institutional investors would care about hoarding all those homes for themselves, all that real estate for themselves, if you could just build as many as you wanted? Like if you could just sit there and build a home, live in it for 2 years, sell it, build another home, live in it for 2 years, sell it, build, do you think there would be a crunch, there would be like a supply change or a supply shortage of homes? Of course not. All right? There would be everybody building as many homes as they want. They wouldn't be worth that much. But if you put a limitation on how many can actually be built, whether it's through permitting process or people just literally don't have the ability to do it themselves, then you're going to find that the supply-demand imbalances is going to create an opportunity for institutional investors. This is a matter of time. It wasn't a matter of people doing it for manipulation purposes. Yes, people take advantage of the situation, which looks like a manipulation. And if you want to call it that, fine. Go live in a communist country that will prevent people from doing that. Right? But you can also understand that this is underlying economic forces that are at play here. And if there is a limitation of a certain commodity or product or item out there that has a demand for it, you don't think that institutional investors are going to look at that and say, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the situation? Of course they are. That's the nature of this whole thing. Right? To try and prevent it from happening is literally like saying, hey, I can live in a tyrannical government that makes me happy. Is that possible? I don't think so. So it's better to understand the economic forces that are at play. We used to be a manufacturing powerhouse that brought in new money from our efforts of producing and saving. That was a wonderful thing. It gave us a great working class, middle class individual that could then buy a home and live out their life with a very simple means of just showing up every day for work. We no longer live in that environment. And for somebody to say, hey, how do we go back to that? It's just like, well, go and live some artistic fantasy out there, because that's not going to happen. Right? It's much better to understand it for the situation it is. You know, how many people out there do you know personally, like if you're working class, maybe if you're a high time investor or whatever who's watching this channel, which I get sometimes, I mean, I do have, hedge funds that watch this channel at times. If you're just a working class, everyday average individual, then you probably understand the idea of working under the table, right? You know what working under the table means? It means you work without anybody knowing that you made the money, except for you and the person who gave you the money. That means the government doesn't know about it. It doesn't go to the bank. It doesn't go anywhere but your pocket and whatever you decide to do with it. And it's just between you and me, right? That's working under the table. And you know how many people do that for a living? A lot of people. Now, what's even easier is to work a regular job and work under the table as well. And so when you think about how many people nowadays have the ability to acquire money in their existence of life without actually having to claim that money through online activities, whether it's selling stuff through marketplace or doing, side hustle jobs or something of that nature, where nobody knows where that money even existed in your world. Think about how much that can go into paying rent or buying assets or anything else out there, and how many people are actually doing that. This is not claimed in household income. So when you see household income not being able to keep up with a lot of these asset prices, you also have to think how much of that household income is actually much higher than what it is stating there on those statistics, especially nowadays with access to the vast world of the internet. Right? That's something to think about. Yeah. 20 minutes into this one, I think it was a really good live stream. We got 372 people watching with 66 likes. Be sure and hit that like button. We'll get more people to join in on this one, and I'll just keep right on rambling. What do we got here? Let's go through some of these comments here. This too shall pass. You live on a farm. I don't. I live in one of the most expensive places in the entire country to live. All right. Get your knee pads. No, no, thank you. I think I'll go ahead and excel through life. Burner cards, here we come. Oh, what does that mean? Necessary, that's what it's called. This too shall pass. Jesus Christ doesn't look like your profile picture. He's Arab or black. Okay. Oh, man. Yep, cash. Okay, cash is king. Once the government gets rid of cash, we are screwed. All right. I'm a couple of weeks from homelessness, living in hotels. This sucks. Yeah, I bet it does. All right. Sounds like this too shall pass. Took me time to sacrifice. No one's saying it's easy. What we were saying. Well, I mean, the thing is, I think the key to that right there was that you took time to sacrifice, right? Like most people don't want to do that. They say, hey, I shouldn't have to sacrifice anything. I should have a higher standard of living, enjoy my life 100% of the time, and never once ever commit myself to anything that is going to be putting myself in a position that is going to be having a return of a secured interest beyond that of my occupation. That is not the thoughts of most people out there. And so, since that's not the thought of most people, they end up relying on their 9 to 5 job to try and provide them with everything that they ever possibly have needed without actually doing any of the dedication or commitment to what it is that's going to actually give them an independent life. Now, I know a lot of people out there are like, dude, you don't understand. I'm already cut to the bitter end. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, maybe. If that's the case, then if you can't cut your necessities anymore, right? If you can't cut them out anymore and you can't increase your income anymore, then yeah, it sucks for you. You got to move your location. Where you're at sucks. You can't be there. Because if you have cut your expenses as much as you can and you've got your income is coming in as much as you can and you're still not making it, your location is no longer suitable for you. You have to move. That's it. All right? Because you have to move to an area in which that your necessities are affordable to what it is that you can earn. And if you're in an area where you can't do that, then you have to go to an area where you can, or you have to change your skills. That's it. Yeah. All right. My tenants have to pay me in cash. I don't use banks much at all. I buy gold and platinum coins, scatterbury them. What do you think about stable coins helping prop up the dominance of the US dollar? Sean, I mean, I think that there's an excuse for doing that, and there's probably a way to lock people in that would give it some sort of dominance. But you have to understand the dominance of the US dollar is going to be there regardless of the stable coins because the sheer amount of debt that was issued in US dollars that is outside of this country. I mean, when you think about how many contracts have been written by people who do not have any involvement with the United States, not our people, not our corporations, not our banks, not our government, nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with the United States whatsoever. But these contracts are due in dollars. That's what's going to cause the dollar to be dominating because no other currency does that. Nobody else is writing. I mean, they write debts that are due in other currencies, but not to the level that they do it with the United States dollar. The stable coin issuance is for one reason, just one, right? Because everything else can exist and you can have all the taxing and tracing and all the other stuff but that's already kind of happening, right? It just kind of refines that. It just makes it a little easier, it makes it more efficient. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. What I am saying is that there is one reason, just one, that they would be issuing out the stable coins and going to a digital currency to remove cash out of the system, and that is to go into negative interest rates. So right now, that is not a desperate need to go into negative interest rates. But if the Federal Reserve and the central banks around the world, and a lot of them are starting to move very close to us, take their Fed funds rate or their central bank uh, overnight lending rates, whatever the central banks of the world calls their particular overnight lending rate, like the United States calls it the Fed funds rate or the effective fund rate, They take that to zero. They have run out of monetary policy, and they no longer can use the interest rate adjustments as a policy tool. The talking about it right now is more of an effective tool than the actual rate adjustment, because once the rate adjustment goes back to zero, that's it. It's gone. It's go all over again, and they're back to using their words as the effective tool, unless they can take that Fed funds rate negative into down below zero into negative territory, but going below the lower bound of zero. The only way to do that is with a cashless society. So come the lower bound of zero, achieving the lower bound of zero again, until that actually happens, there's real no need to have a stable coin. But you can't go to zero and then expect to be able to conduct your monetary policy without either using, again, the credible threat theory of forward guidance, job owning, signaling, or, again, just, straight up lying. However you want to look at it. If you don't want to use that tactic, then you have to have a cashless society and central bank digital currencies or something so that you can take it into negative territory. And the reason why you have to have that is because once you go into negative territory, people are not going to accept a negative interest rate on their deposits. They'll just pull it out in cash unless you just don't have cash. Okay. So I hope all that was clear enough. So like the idea is that they don't necessarily need the central bank digital currency today. They have the tools to deal with the economy. They can still lower interest rates. They now have the neutral interest rate far enough above the neutral or below the lower bound so they can actually drop far enough below neutral to possibly stimulate the economy. That, in conjunction with the forward guidance or signaling, they could probably stimulate the economy with the known tools that they have today. However, if they do that, they will be out of ammo. So right now, to establish the central bank digital currency or stable coin or whatever it happens to be for the central bank around the world, because they're all going to do this together, right? In order to make that an effective tool, you have to establish it today. You don't have to use it today, but you have to create it today in order for it to be used at some point in the future when they run out. It's like they have the tools to deal with the economy now, but they will run out of those tools in the future. They have to build a new tool today and have it ready to deploy, so when this tool is done, the next tool can be used. And that next tool is the stable coins. Does all that make sense? All right, moving on. Wayne, I crushed my heel bone. It's an inch flatter now. Oh, God, that's gotta hurt. Standing hurts. Being broke hurts more. I'm not supposed to be able to walk. I do anyhow. Excuses to do or excuses to not do. We all make choices. Yeah, the problem with working while you're injured, though, is that if you don't heal properly, then you'll have a hard time working going into the future. You have to heal up properly so that you can be an efficient worker going into the future. Like, I broke my toe a long, long time ago, and I just kind of blew it off, and I limped on it for a while, and it pops all the time, and it's just kind of achy. But now that I'm getting older, I mean, it hurts a lot, and it makes it difficult sometimes to walk. And I think to myself, man, if I was like, living in a primitive time, of course, I probably wouldn't have made it to this age anyway, but an injury like that means you can't get away fast enough, right? Means you can't chase it down or whatever it is that's the problem, and then you just don't survive. So something as simple as like just a toe injury from a long time ago comes back to haunt you years later, And it's really, again, because I didn't take care of it. I just kind of walked around on it and whatever. All right, I'm in the trades, and we didn't get a raise during all the inflation. All the previous low-end jobs are paying almost as much now. Pisses me off, honestly. I should go do easier work, almost the same. Joshua, I feel that same way. I feel that exact same way, and actually, I felt that way my entire life. You know that? Anytime I worked hard, got a raise, the minimum wage would increase. It was always nipping at my heels my entire life. Minimum wage just drove me absolutely bananas. I could not take it. Every time that I felt like I was just getting, working harder, taking on more responsibility, getting a raise so that I can earn a little bit more money, boom, they would raise the minimum wage, and then everything would be like, this that much more expensive for me. And I thought to myself, man, this sucks. Like, why do I even try? I don't even get it. And so to think about it nowadays is like even a good job. Like there was a time when you think, man, no, I got this job as, a welder. Like, like I used to think as a kid, somebody who has a profession as a welder would be paid a lot of money and that would be enough to buy all the things that you could ever possibly imagine, like a big, beautiful truck and house and have all the things that you could ever want just from being a welder. Well, yeah, it's not quite that way. Yeah. And same thing for doing construction or anything else out there. I mean, I even looked at the sales staff when I was working at the lumber yard, like some of the top salesmen who were driving nice vehicles and, buying houses and stuff like that. I looked at them as just like, oh man, look at this. If I could just only make it to that position, life would be so grand. It would be so easy. The standard of living would be so easy to achieve and be so awesome. And then when I got there, I realized, man, no, that's not the case. Not this many years later, decades later. It's not working like that because that's not the way the economy progresses when it comes to understanding the cycle. Like it just moves in a particular direction, and part of that is a rise of a middle class that eventually gets separated, then turning into these two social classes that are distant from each other, that have experiencing two completely different economies. Well, here we are seeing that, and now we want to take on the understanding of it being like, hey, remember back when our grandfather would talk about working at that factory job, showing up there every day, and then being able to have this wonderful retirement? Where is that at? Well, it doesn't exist. Because back then, your grandfather was selling products, right? Essentially building products that were being sold to foreign buyers that were sending us the money. That's why we had such a better standard of living. It doesn't work like that. Now we have debt issuance going out there, right, to buy the foreign production. So we send out debt issuance. That's where the new money comes from. Think about that for just a minute. People who have first access to the money are spending it at face value, acquiring the things that you are trying to work for. You are taking an old school mentality, producing and saving, and trying to apply it to people you are competing against who are taking out debt to buy the same thing. How hard do you have to work to compete against that? It's almost impossible. That's why it's so frustrating for people. That's why it's so frustrating for the working class. That's why it's so frustrating for people to look at political environment to say, how do you fix this? It's because you can't. You can't fix it. You must understand the situation for what it is so that you can position yourself accordingly for it. To know that you do have to now sacrifice in the most profound way, and then take that and put it towards something that is going to have a secured interest beyond that of your occupation. That's called being a capitalist. If you cannot do that, if you are forcing your existence against that grain, saying I'm not going to do that, that is evil intent, then you are going to be left behind and you're going to be crying why. It's sad, and I get it, and I don't expect people to have to go and bust their butt. That's what I'm doing to make it in this world. What I expect you to do is nothing, because I have no expectations outside of what it is that I am going to do. People say, how is it that we're going to do this? And they ask me all these questions like, it's like I'm in charge or something like that. And I think to myself, if you are not internalizing it for yourself to deal with the situation that you have at hand, maybe you got it going on. Maybe you got 15 apartment complexes and you're renting them all out to, government subsidized, renters or something of that nature. And you're like, no, man, I'm just killing it in every way. You just got to understand how to do it. You're absolutely right, man. I just have to understand how to do it like that. Because some people out there are doing it in such fashions, and there's other people who are saying, man, you shouldn't do it. And it was just like, no, what you're saying is that you don't want to do it that way. And because he's doing it that way, you don't like it. So you don't think that he should do it too. Well, I think that you should do something. Right? Like, you see how the difference works here? I mean, it doesn't matter what other people are now up to if you are just sitting there blaming them for it. You got to think, okay, man, I have to make decisions for myself that put me in a better place. Number one, cut back on my expenses so that I can position myself with a secured rate of interest beyond that of my occupation. Focus in on that. How do you do that? I mean, you can do it as something as a dividend paying stock. How simple is it to get one of those? Cash App. How cheap can you go? How about $5? $5, you can immediately start stepping down the path of being a capitalist. I don't know which stock to pick. You got to do that research. That's, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, there's plenty of YouTube channels out there that'll show you how to pick that. So to understand that if you can't go and become a property owner, then you're going to have to be a capitalist. And you can be a property owner and a capitalist at the same time. Real estate investment trusts, dividend paying real estate investment trust ETFs out there, just figure it out one way or the other. Because the idea that I can be a hardworking individual and make it in this society and this economy, that's from yesteryear, right? And it's fun to think about. It's fun to say, hey, wouldn't that be a nice fantasy world to live in again? And be like, yeah, it would be. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to just show up for my 9 to 5, my day job. If that was enough to do everything that I need, you know how awesome that would be for me? You know how like I would just I mean, everything would be so awesome. I could go fishing all the time, and I could go hunting all the time, and I could go vacationing all the time, and I could have all the friends and family and barbecue events and all the other things that I could ever possibly imagine in my 9 to 5 job doing it. Do you know how awesome of an experience that would be? That would be wonderful. I would love that idea. I don't know how the hell that's going to happen, and I'm not going to sit around and delusionally think of opportunities that would exist if we just hypothetically did something together. I mean, that doesn't work like that. I'm going to think about what it is that I need to do in order to create that environment for myself today, right now. Doing the things that I need to do with what I see going on out there. And knowing part of it is how that separation is taking place. That's simple fact, right? It's I mean, I try to make it as simple and understanding, and I think that's a reasonably good way of looking at it, is that the reason why we can't live like our grandparents did is because our grandparents were producing and saving things that they were selling to the world, right? When the world sent us their money, we were able to increase the standard of living. We don't do it like that anymore. If we produced things and sold it to the world and the world sent us their money, we would have a whole different environment here. So for people to say, hey, I want to go and have a working class job, well, you don't produce things that the world is buying. You're producing things that rich elite people are buying. Because there's essentially two classes of people, the consumers and those who don't. And the top 20% do all the consuming. Top 10% do 50% of the consuming. That's it, man. Understand it in this fashion. It sucks. I know. I don't like it. That's the hard part for a lot of people to internalize for them, is that I don't like the situation that we're in. I'm not trying to say it's great. All right? I'm not. And I'm not saying that there's no way that it could possibly change. What I'm saying is that the road that you want it to go down is probably going to be a very difficult one. Understanding the road that we are on so that you can position yourself for it is a hell of a lot easier. All right? Because life ain't easy. Survival ain't easy, Woo, wait, look at all these comments. Okay, down here we go to the bottom. Nah, it is all there. You just have to get out there and get in it. Dress for the job you want. Wear a jersey after you earn your first tailor-made suit. 30 years ago, you could buy a home in LA or New York for $200,000 or less. Yeah. And again, we have to understand that we were in a much different economy back 30 years ago. We were still somewhat of a producer, right? I mean, think about it. How many times have you heard about all our manufacturing jobs are getting shipped overseas? And I'm thinking, no, they're not getting shipped overseas. The foreign competitors are doing a much better job of producing at a better price. And this is described very, very, very accurately in Cantillon's essay from hundreds of years ago. Chapter 6, 7, and 8, the increase and decrease of money to the state and the further reflections upon that topic. Right? Where is it? Hold on here. I forget. I think it's maybe the first chapter, is it? Cantillon uses this price specie flow mechanism to analyze some of the effects of inflation. Increasing the supply of money by mining hurts some people and benefits others because certain prices and incomes rise faster than others, right? Certain people get hurt and certain people benefit. That's the wedge being driven. However, if the new money is accumulated and saved by those who successfully export goods, either because of superior quality or more efficient transportation, it will lead to a higher standard of living. And this is exactly what the United States had faced back during the great industrial revolution and us becoming the manufacturing powerhouse. Okay. He goes on, this is chapter 7. When there is an increase in the quantity of money, prices will increase depending on how the new money holders decide to spend their money. People who have first access to that money, what do they spend it on? That's where the new money goes to, and those people have first access to the money, right? As the first people who are spending it. It's the people at the end of that line. They're the ones who suffer. Right? The holders decide on how they spend their money. The price changes will also be affected by such things as regulation in trade and the perishability of the products that are traded. In other words, the simple quantity theory of money is naive in proposing that a doubling of the quantity of money will double the price of all of prices equally. And I think this is important to understand when it comes to the increasing of money, is that it's not going to increase the inflation necessarily. It increases the consumption, and that increase in consumption throws the supply demand imbalances out. If everybody was to all of a sudden get an increase of money, would they go out there and increase the demand for toilet paper? Probably not. They'd probably buy the same amount of toilet paper they bought before, but would they go out there and buy ribeyes or beer or wine or something else? Yeah, they'd probably increase their consumption of those other items, which would you then see the inflation start to take place in those items. You see how that works? Like some goods more than others. That's why it's not equal. It's like doubling the quantity of money will not double the prices. It'll double some price, maybe even more. Changes in the quantity of money will change relative prices and have real effect on the economy, a phenomenon known as the Cantillon effect. And then on chapter 8, the increase in the supply of money from a balance of trade eventually causes prices to rise. This in turn puts pressure on domestic producers. See what's happened here? An increase in the supply of money from a balance of trade eventually causes prices to rise. We were producing manufacturing powerhouse in the United States, producing the world's greatest stuff. That stuff got us new money. That new money increased our standard of living. It raised the prices of everything. This in turn puts pressure on the domestic producers and increases the imports. As those prices rise, foreign producers are out there looking at that saying, hey, you domestic producers over there, you guys, you produce at a high price. We can do it cheaper. Right? This is Cantillon describing this. This is how your domestic manufacturers got exported to the foreign producers. This is how it happened. The people say it was greed and manipulation and political problems and all this other stuff, and I'm thinking, no, it was an underlying economic force that Cantillon was describing hundreds of years ago. If you want to be pissed off about it, then yeah, go look at it in a political fashion, because there's plenty of blame to go around. If you want to look at it and say, oh man, it was an evil intent from greedy corporations, yeah, that's the nature of human beings to try and make a profit. That's not something that you can, that's like a feature, not a downfall. Right? And it's part of the system, part of the cycle, part of everything that happens is that you're going to find people who end up producing cheaper than what you can do it for. If you are not vigilant in keeping your living expenses low, keeping your efficiency low, so that you can constantly compete against people who are sleeping on the ground, then you're not going to be able to constantly maintain that production. You will lose it. Just like the United States is losing it. Because we want to live in mansions, while other people are saying, hey, I live on the ground and I'm going to produce what you're producing, so go, go get bent. All right, and to say what I really want to say. All right, this in turn put pressures on domestic producers and increases imports. The result is that the balance of trade is reduced and eventually is negative. This is Cantillon's price specie flow mechanism, which demonstrates the reason for the tendency for equilibrium in international monetary flows. See, this is the 70s. This is when Nixon severed us from the gold standard. It was because there was an equilibrium that was needing to take place. We were losing our manufacturing to foreign producers. Those foreign producers were going to demand the gold back. And we were like, no. It was like, yeah, that's the way the whole nature of the beast works. You guys were manufacturers. You produced the world's greatest stuff. You exported all that stuff. You acquired all the gold. Now that you have all the gold, the rest of the world is broke because they don't have the gold because you have it all. You've hoarded it all for yourself. They're producers producing now the things that you want, and you have the gold. You have to relinquish the gold over to them. And Nixon was like, no, they can take paper promises instead. And the world was like, no, this isn't going to work. And we already went over what happened there. Right. All right. The balance of trade can result in economic power, but this also causes the economy to lapse into luxury and decline. Right. Fix it. Go fix it. Go figure out how to stop the cycle from taking place. Understand that when we were a manufacturing powerhouse bragging about having the highest standard of living, it was at that moment that we should have pushed ourselves not into a luxurious experience of having that higher standard of living, but continued to be the producer savers, keeping our living expenses incredibly low. And that's not a very fun experience. That's what you should have done. But since people don't want to behave that way, and I know I'm one of them, I don't want to behave that way either. I want to work hard, acquire things in my life that are then giving me a luxurious experience. That's what I want. I want a view, 2 ribeyes, and live music. That's what I want. All right? And so when I think about what it is that people are going to have to do in order to acquire the things that they need in their life that gives them some sort of idea of being in the American dream, you have to work so hard against people who are borrowing that into existence. You're trying to work it into existence while other people borrow it into existence. So how are you going to compete? How is the new money coming in, and how are you getting new money? See, those people get new money in from borrowing it, and now you're going to try and compete with a daily, hourly wage against people who can just borrow it into existence? This is the problem we face. There will come a reckoning, don't get me wrong. I mean, he lapsed into luxury and declined. I mean, Cantillon described it hundreds of years ago. There is a day of reckoning coming. How far out is that? People say it was yesteryear. How long ago was it? How many times have you heard it's about ready to collapse, recession's on its way, stock market's about ready to fail, the housing market's about ready to fail? You hear this constantly, but yet new injection of money through debt issuance is a continuous. Like, yeah, I can understand having a complete crashing of the system if you were to actually do something of like a reasonable belief of the right thing when it comes to your debt, but they don't do a reasonable right thing when it comes to debt because they don't look at debt like we look at debt. We look at debt like, hey, we got a credit card we need to pay off. Right? That seems reasonable to most people when they say, hey, I got a credit card. I got to get this thing paid off. The powers that be, the banking system, the governments, they don't look at it like that. They don't look like, oh man, what are we got to do about this credit card debt? We got to someday, I mean, they talk to you about it like that because, you know, they know it's important to you, but that it's not important to them. All right? The new money comes in from debt issuance, and how they get access to that new money is what's important to them. All right? What it is that they're promising to spend that new money on, that's what's important to you. So know this for how it works. Yes, there was a time you could work. You could work a day job and say, hey, my day job should be enough, and you were absolutely right. And if you were disciplined, it would work. You could have the house, the wife, the kids, everything you have ever wanted because you were producing things that was getting sold to the rest of the globe. But we don't work like that anymore, not in this nation. So it's important to understand that if you have a day job, you're barely going to cut it. It's going to be enough to get the rent. Okay? Might be enough to get a car. And might be enough to take a trip every once in a while. And that's like about the limit. Right? Because that's not what they're intended to do anymore with the situation that we are now facing, is because you're working a job that doesn't produce what it is that the world is buying. Even if you were producing something that the world is buying, now you're competing against people who are borrowing money that you're trying to work a daily job for. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to work real hard to acquire this thing, and now somebody just bought the thing that I was trying to buy. How did they do it? Were they working hard? Nope. They borrowed money to do it. What do I have to do? You're going to have to borrow money too. because the only way you can compete is to have the ability to borrow money. Well, I don't earn enough considering how many people are borrowing money to buy this stuff. I can't compete against that anymore. And it's like, yeah, your job doesn't compete, and your ability to acquire a loan doesn't even compete anymore. Huh, yeah, you're screwed. You're screwed. Better figure out a way to cut your expenses and increase your money because you're not going to get it. What am I supposed to say? I mean, I see it, how it's going down here. I see the Cantillon wrote about it hundreds of years ago, saying the separation between the rich and the poor will grow ever grossly more as new money continues to pour into the system. And so when I think about debt issuance, that's the new money. It's going to continue to pour into the system. You're going to have a separation between the rich and the poor. And if you give it to the poor, they will conduct themselves in a way that essentially hands it right to the rich. You can't give it to the poor. If you could simply just give it to the poor, they wouldn't be poor today, right? Now, I'm not saying there isn't circumstances for some people who are quite unfortunate in their circumstances, but most people made decisions that put them right where they are today. And if you gave them a bunch of money, they would blast it away and they wouldn't have it, and the good times would be gone, and they would not be in any better of a position than they are today. I don't know what to say about it. That's just the case. Man, I have been rambling. We're 50 minutes into this thing. Did I even read a comment today? Look at all these comments. Okay. I work a job that does, this is coming from Alex. I work a job that does produce and export products that is being purchased from other countries. We have a lot of advancement opportunities, and I feel so blessed. So many coworkers complain. Yeah, and that's awesome that you're actually in a position. And I have to say, it's not that the United States doesn't produce anything. We produce a lot of stuff. In fact, we're one of the biggest manufacturers in the entire world. The problem that we face is that we import a hell of a lot more than we export. And that's where the problem is, because when you import stuff, you export money. And no matter how good of a manufacturer you are, if this trade imbalance exists, then you will be exporting money the entire time, which is the point of having a trade imbalance. It's called Triffins Dilemma. If you want the world to be accepting of the dollar as a world reserve currency, then you have to be able to get that dollar out there to the world. To get the dollar out there to the world, what do you have to do? You have to either hand it to them in charitable contributions, swap it out with currencies, or buy a bunch of their stuff, right? And if you run trade imbalances where you're importing more than you're exporting, you import stuff, you export dollars. Now you got a way of exporting the dollars out there to the world to meet the world's demand for the liability, right? So this is like the whole idea that Trump's like, oh, we're going to cut this back and we're going to balance this trade. And I'm like, no, what you're going to do is you're going to destroy the dollar in that sense, right? And because what you're going to do is you're going to create demand for dollars so damn high, right? Because if you're not exporting the dollars through the trade imbalances, then the demand for dollars is going to go up as the contracts begin to come due, and the access to dollars are limited because you're not exporting those dollars through the trade imbalance. So if these demand for dollars starts to increase because the contracts are coming due, these are contracts that have been written outside of the United States, they don't have anything to do with the United States. Right? And these people who are demanding the dollars, yes, they could accept the contract renegotiated into another currency, but generally those people who are demanding dollars for that contract also have debts that are due in dollars. So everybody wants dollars. Nobody wants some other currency, especially the BRICS nations. So now as this situation occurs where the limited amount of dollars are getting exported due to the imbalanced trade that is now becoming balanced again, this is going to cause the dollar to strengthen, and our exports that we have going out there to the other nations will become more difficult. And the trade balance will be found back into the same conditions we are in today, as people will not be buying as much stuff from us because they simply will not have the dollars to do it. We're in a bad situation, guys, if you're thinking that the inequality is going to get less. If you feel that it's going to get worse going into the future and you know how to position yourself accordingly for that, then it's probably going to do quite well. because I just don't see how it is that they can create a decent life for everybody out there while at the same time shrinking the inequality. They can create a decent life for about 20% of the people out there who are the important ones that they can look at in order to continue on with the economy, where everybody else is going to suffer behind, and they probably would have anyway because they don't make decisions that are appropriate. Because if they were making decisions that are appropriate, they wouldn't be in the bottom 20%. They would be in the upper part. And that's what I've learned from Cantillon. And I love how people get mad at me saying I'm blaming the victim here, and I'm thinking, no, I was in the same position that I'm describing. 40 years old, broke, in debt, had nothing, no vehicle broken down, had no idea what I was going to do, had no expectations of any kind of, income coming from any other direction other than my day job, and I was in a miserable state. This was 9 years ago. Right? And so at 9 years ago, when I was thinking about how horrible my existence was at the time and how difficult of a road that I had to go down in order to change the way that I was thinking, behaving, acting, and feeling in order to be in a position in which that I feel that I'm somewhat, now I wouldn't necessarily go into the whole world of secure, but I feel pretty confident in that my abilities to make my bills and my mortgage payment and all that other stuff, I don't stress about those things right now, which is something that I had begged for at one point in my life to have. Other people were looking for jet airplanes and fancy vacations and other stuff. I was looking to pay my bills on time. That was my goal, and so as other people were like, oh man, you don't drive fancy cars, and you don't have a mansion, and you don't have an indoor swimming pool, and you don't have all the stuff that would be rich, and I'm like, man, bro, I'm paying my bills on time. I don't know what you look for in your life. Right? But all I needed was that so that I could feel free. And that's what I feel. Right? Which is something that I never had before. Is a feeling of freedom. And I get that with the ability to buy whatever I want, because I have the ability to buy whatever I want, and not buying whatever I want gives me the feeling of being free from all the possessions of the world, and I can just exist out there. Man, that is awesome. I don't know how many people find that to be a good feeling. I do. And I think, for a lot of people out there, to have that sort of understanding of life is probably some sort of fascination for them. They couldn't do it. They got too much stuff in their life to maintain. And to me, having freedom is just that. To be able to do whatever it is that you want on any given moment at any given day. Which doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a bunch of stuff in your life. I wonder how much gold America really has. Probably not much. Safety is key. Yeah. I think freedom is key. Right? Security comes from yourself. Nobody else can provide you security. And if you feel secure, not only in your confidence of your position that you have taken, your life, and just everything, your physical being, that's where freedom really comes from. Is that if you have relied on the external security, now you don't have freedom, right? Because you're reliant upon that, and the moment that disappears, all of a sudden, so does your security, and so does your freedom, and all that's gone. Yeah. Simon, what do you think separates the people who value that feeling of freedom versus those who constantly in a state of consumerism? Why doesn't everyone want that freedom? I can't tell you. That is literally comes down to everybody's personal opinion on what it is that they got going on in their life. You know how many people would be embarrassed to drive a Suburban like this? I don't know that feeling. I don't have that feeling inside of me. I do not feel embarrassed about driving a Suburban, right? Especially this old beat up, clapped out Suburban. I love it, right? The fact that it still has junk in here left over from the previous owner, just random stuff, little stuff. I think that is just the best part of this thing, All right, there's that kind of history behind it. Other people don't feel that way, and I can't describe what it is that they're feeling in their head that put them in a position in which that if they have a spot on their car, they're embarrassed about that. Like, I don't know what's going on in their head that puts them in that condition. I don't have that. Like, if I don't shave for a couple of days or a week or a month, I don't really care. Yeah, it's just like that. Like, my wife kind of just starts to like, dude, come on, you know. But other than that, like, I mean, I don't know who it is that is going to be upset with me if I don't shave. You know, I mean, like, there might be somebody on here on, on YouTube who might say something about it, but I don't think their care about it is very elevated. They just don't care. Nobody does. Nobody cares about anything that you are doing or I'm doing or anything else. Nobody cares about anybody else but themselves. That's it. Um, And so when you think about a guy who can't drive a car, if it has a spot on it or a spot on their clothing or something of that nature, like they got to look 100% absolutely perfect. I'm like, dude, who and what is it that you're trying to prove to the world out there? All right. I mean, I can understand that you really want to look good, all right, and you want to carry yourself in this way, and that's like, and you don't want anything on your car because you paid a lot for your car and you really pride for your car. But if you're doing that for somebody else to look at you and you're embarrassed that something happened, you're carrying yourself in completely wrong energy. All right? I don't know. Maybe you like being in that energy. What am I say? You're in the wrong energy. Maybe you like being like that, but I don't look at life like that at all. I mean, it's it's about what I got. Like, there was a time when I used to conduct myself to try and please other people, you know. It was just like I didn't want anybody to be upset around me, and I wouldn't try to conduct myself that would say, okay, man, I don't want to disrupt or cause any waves or rock the boat or anything like that. I found that I was very frustrated living that sort of life, and now I just don't care. You know? And if that's the case, I find that a lot of people get frustrated with being around me in that way. Other people, they find that very appealing and very authentic, and that's what they want to be around is authentic people who aren't willing to act around other people so that you can meet their approval. And those are the people that I want to be around too. And it works out. So fake people hang around fake people. Pretending to be something you're not. You know, isn't that weird? That's why I always thought it was weird that I was like, man, am I really going up on stage and speaking at economic conferences? I mean, it was just like these other people, like financial advisors, and they're like big time investors and all kinds of stuff. And I'm just the uneducated economist, working class dude, breaking down macroeconomics from a working class point of view. Y'all want to hear my opinion, huh? Cool. I mean, here it is, a space that I really have no place being in, and I'm just absolutely loving it. And I feel that I'm doing quite well, and didn't know that I could. Only ever known the beaters with no payments. Why play keeping up with the Joneses? And Alex, I understand that a lot of people will do it for that reason. Like, I can understand that if you just really, really, really want a new vehicle to drive around because you've worked hard for it your entire life and acquiring it. Don't get me wrong, I see it. I would want one. I want the new car. I want to drive around and something that's really nice and classy and fun. But to be honest, I really only want to do that occasionally. Like, for the most part, I don't really care about what car I drive to work. I just want to get to work on time. And if it's, this old Suburban or if it's a new Camaro, I mean, that doesn't really make much of a difference. The only time I really want to enjoy the Camaro is if I'm driving it to a place where I really want to enjoy driving it. So other people look at it differently. Like, they like the new car. That's part of them. That's part of their hobby or their experience in life or something of that nature. And that's what they really want to enjoy is being when they're driving, they want to drive a new car. And I get that, right? And to me, like, I think I would much rather have dividend paying assets, than than to have a depreciating asset. That's me. Everybody's different. And I also understand what's going to cause the situation for most people to be in a downturn in their life, whether it's financially or economically or whatever it comes down to. And it's usually because of their luxurious experiences that they've gone into. It's not just me saying it, it's Cantillon, right? That causes the economy to lapse into luxury and decline. Right? That's how it works. Simon, where does the money go when statistics prove only 2% of the wealth stays wealthy after 2 generations? If the system isn't fair, then why does the money change hands so often? Well, I mean, just like anything out there, how do you hold on to it? Right? I understand that people want, like the idea of just even holding on to your purchase. Like most people say, the dollar used to buy this and now it only buys this. It's lost this much of its purchasing power. How do you explain that? And I think to myself, well, explain to me why you would think that the dollar would hold on to its purchasing power, right? You have to move it somewhere. And if you don't do that in the right way, you're going to lose it. So just because you have it doesn't mean you get to keep it. You're going to lose it to purchasing power and you're going to lose it to bad decision making. Guaranteed. Like those two things will happen. People do not always make the right decision, right? 100% of the time, nailed it. Like, I mean, who says that? Nobody can say that. So it's obvious that if you have it, you have to work at keeping it, and if you don't work at keeping it, you'll lose it. Somebody else will get it. It's an ever changing thing. It would be nice that if you could get a dollar and say, hey, purchasing power secured, right? But it doesn't do that. And so when people say, well, how come? Well, it's just like, well, don't worry about how come. Just know that it doesn't and that you have to deal with the fact that it doesn't, right? I mean, it doesn't hold on to its purchasing power because there's so much of it out there, and there's always people out there who are going to demand more and less of it at any given time. There's no way that it's going to hold on to it. It's meant to change goods and services to other goods and services, and the quicker you do that, the more you can retain the what you believe or perceived purchasing power of what it is. So once you understand that, yes, it doesn't hold purchasing power, I have a limited amount of time that I can deal with this thing to hold on to its purchasing power. But most likely, if I wanted to have any kind of retention of purchasing power, I have to deploy it into other things and then take it back out and use it. Move it into rental property, stocks, gold, silver, something of that nature. And even in then, you're taking your chances. All right. Because I know, like, I want it to hold its purchasing power, but it doesn't do it. So to say, like, it should, you're right, it should. It doesn't. So once you have accepted that part, that it just doesn't do it, then you can move on. Right? Our economics are determined by our politician rubes. They are not. All right, Stephen? And it is for individuals who have conditioned themselves to have an experience within their life that a political decision then affects them. Those people, it does. Each and every single one of us has an economy that we have to deal with. If you believe that the politicians are in charge of the fact that the manufacturers are moving over to a foreign producers, moving out of this country, and choose to ignore the fact that Cantillon described exactly how that was going to happen hundreds of years ago, then who is going to be the one who is understanding of the underlying economic forces and those who are looking at the symptoms of politicians as the problem? Which one of us is looking at the appropriate thing? Like, I understand that you're looking at politicians saying, no, look right there, they did all this stuff to me. And I'm thinking, yeah, they had the power to do it because of what Cantillon was describing hundreds of years before that. Right? This is going to corrupt people. You don't think that there's going to be corruption going into the future. It's going to get worse. You do realize that, right? Like, the idea of the rich elite putting themselves in a position that secures them to where they are and the poor being pushed into a position in which that remains them there is going to get worse. That issue is going to happen because you think about it, the massive inequality that is happening, the underlying economic forces that are separating the people are going to create what is going to be recognized as the reasons, but it is the symptoms that is causing this because it was already occurring. You see? Like people were like, man, it's such a struggle down here, and they are secured up there at their position. Yeah, this widening wedge that was occurring from hundreds of years ago is now driven super deep right now. It's creating this massive inequality, and you're looking for a reason behind it, and you're blaming the rich, making it seem like they are securing their position there, and you are now put in a position of entrapment at the lower end, and you're thinking that this is done on purpose by these politicians, failing to recognize that the wedge was being driven from hundreds of years ago. The manufacturing state back in the turn of the century, when we were moving into an industrialized country, industrialist revolution, where the people were producing the world's greatest stuff and sending that out there to the world, that right there started the decline, because they increased their standard of living. Maybe they shouldn't have done that. Maybe they should have not increased their standard of living. They should have kept that standard of living incredibly low, continuing to produce the stuff out there to the rest of the world. Then we wouldn't have lost our manufacturers. But no, we had to have a higher standard of living because everybody wants to enjoy their hard work and savings. That's not something you can blame people for. Like I will repeat this over and over and over again from the understanding of an underlying economic force, always, because it's more accurate than blaming an external politician on a symptom. All right? Those manufacturers wouldn't have left if the politicians didn't allow it. Like, well, yeah, they would have. Cantillon described hundreds of years ago. Those politicians didn't have a damn thing to do with it. Right? Now, you can blame them because there's plenty of blame to go around, and there was things that were happening at the time that made it appear as if it was them causing it, but it wasn't, right? Because it was an underlying economic force, and I recognize it. I see it because Cantillon was describing it hundreds of years before it happened, that was going to take place. Blaming politicians is going to cause a situation in which that you will have your life geared around their decision making. That's a problem for me. Maybe it's not a problem for you. That's a problem for me. I don't want government involved in my life. In fact, the more I can get government irrelevant to my life, the better I feel about it. And part of that is not giving them any kind of power of thought. If you think that they are creating a situation that is holding you down, I guarantee you they will. I know. The New World Order kept me down for years. You wouldn't believe how they picked on me personally and kept me from success. It was incredible. I've never felt so entrapped, slaved, hurt, deprived, all that other stuff. The New World Order kept me so down. I couldn't believe it. Right? It was such their fault too. It was all their fault. Every single bad thing that was going on in my life that I could then look at and say, man, this is a horrible, disastrous thing that is happening to me, I blamed on them. I don't blame them anymore. Well, guess what? I don't have their problem. They're not my problem. They do not exist in my world anymore. They don't create the world of havoc. I don't feel deprived. I don't feel depressed. I don't feel like they have any decision-making capabilities that are going to affect me in what it is that I have going on in my life and what I got going on going forward. Like, they're zero consequence. And guess what? Here it is. Now, I know you want me to make it important again, but I'm not going to, because I understand by giving them that sort of thought power, that it's going to make them important, and they are going to impact my life, and they are going to start deteriorating it again, just much like I used to live. So head down the road, dude. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you not to do it. I'm just saying that I did that already, and I saw what happened. I ain't going to do it again. No, thank you. All right, what do we got here? We got $4.99 from Not Your Problem. Hey, do you have contacts of tradesmen that you recommend? I want work done on houses. You can even make money on referrals. I have trust issues. Well, not your problem. If you're in my area, I didn't realize you were, but if you're in my area and you want like finder fee for referring of like ace good contractors and carpenters and stuff like that, Yeah, you bet, man. Email me and like, just put it in the description of what it is that you're or the subject line of what it is you're talking about. And yeah, man, I'll send you some names for some money. I'll give you some trusted names. I mean, people that I would use. That's like the thing about it is like I would never give out a name of somebody who does work that I wouldn't hire myself ever. Right? And I've known a lot of people, and I've seen some fly by night, and I see people who are quite shady and still seem to be working. And so I don't give out names like that. I just, like my reputation's on the line too. So it's a small town. $1.99 from David. Hardest thing to do is to make a lot of money. It's not. That's actually the easiest thing to do, bro. And that's what's scary about it is that it's incredibly easy to make a lot of money, and that's where I find it so fascinating. Where a lot of people think of it as being hard, right? And I know why. It's because I used to think it was hard too, and it's because of the way that we were growing up. Right? Most of us grew up in a scarcity mentality where like bills were difficult to pay and things were tight and budgets or layoffs or something happened in our life that gave us this idea that money is difficult and it's hard to acquire. And most of the people feel this way. Like in fact, like I would think like 99% of the people feel this way, and it's very rare that you find somebody out there who doesn't, right? And usually the people who don't have the feeling of money being scarce or people who have given up or dropped out, like kind of like the hippie mentality, like they just don't need money in their life because they have conducted themselves in a way that they like, just float through life without having anything or whatever. Some people actually enjoy that. Most people want to have a house and a car and, stuff, right? So when we think about this in this fashion, right? Let me cruise back up. Hold on one second here, guys. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I didn't pass anything else up. Okay, so when we think about this idea of not make or of making a lot of money being hard, that's because when we think about making money, it's like we have to show up to work, right? And that's hard. Right? Show up every single day, listen to your boss, do what they say, acquire this money that then pays the bills and it barely cuts in. This is difficult. Most of the time, we spend 8 hours a day thinking about how hard it is to try and acquire this money. But when we don't think about is how money flies everywhere. Right? Don't think about money on how you earn it. Think about how often you spend that money, where it is you spend that money, who it is that money is being spent on, and the direction of it. Because money is flying around constantly everywhere and it's always circulating around. And so when you think about how it is that you can reach out there and grab it, well, most people just think, well, I got to find somebody who's going to give me an hourly job that I can reach out there and grab it with. All right, so I got to find somebody who I can rely on to pay me. All right, and this ends up being where most of the time that's where the individuals land, thinking about money. I got to get somebody to give this to me. I got to convince them to hire me. I got to, whatever. So in this sense, it becomes very difficult, and that's how a lot of people end up being. Or they think I got to get this major education, so they got to put all this work in to get this education so that they can have this degree to get a higher paying job. And that's something of the same situation. It's just a higher level of it. When you start taking on the idea that there is money out there that can be acquired from not necessarily trading a time for dollar hourly wage. Like you can find a place to sell something, create internet content. Uh, I don't know. There's a billion places to go out there. It's just like you kind of have to take on this idea that there's other places beyond just going and getting a job or having an employer paying me this time. So once you see that, you also have to recognize that it doesn't matter how much it is. See, like most people are like, well, I know how to do it, but it doesn't earn enough. Well, no, that's not true. That's simply not true. If it earns any money, it's enough, right? What you have to do is learn how to increase the amount of money that it's going to produce. So if you can learn to make $1 and it doesn't seem like much, learn to make two. And even if that doesn't seem to be much, learn to make four. Learn to make 8, 16, 32. You see where I'm getting at? Now, pretty soon, that effort that you're putting in is actually doing quite well. This is the mindset that a lot of people don't go down. They just think, no, my boss doesn't do enough. My boss doesn't pay enough. The bills are too expensive. It's politicians' faults. It's bankers' faults. It's greed fault. It's CEOs' faults. It's all these something else is out their fault. But very rarely do we take into consideration, well, maybe I didn't use my time appropriately to acquire the things that I need that are beyond my occupation, like a secured rate of interest. This is the problem, right? It's an internal problem. Always has been, always will be. So once we recognize that money flies everywhere and that I have literally limited myself to the ability of acquiring it because I feel that I need to trade my time for dollars for it, or that my efforts need to be instantaneously rewarded in a profound way, because we have these beliefs that putting effort and time and energy towards something that needs to have this grand return, that limits us. Right? You know how many videos that I had to put out on YouTube before it made any money? You know how long I had to do this before it made any kind of real money, that it was like useful, like, you know, like a real difference to my life? It took me a long, long, long time. But I recognized the idea behind it, that if I put out good content that people were wanting to see, and I was informative and educational, or entertaining or something out there, then I could get a return off of that. When it started to happen, it was very small, but recognizing that it was happening was enough. I saw that I could make $1 on a video, and I thought, oh my gosh, I actually have a product that makes money. Like, beyond my day job, I have something that makes money. I was like, the feeling of that was so huge for me. I monetized the channel, and I was able to, put ads on the channel, and the video played, and then it showed how much money I made, and it was like $1.10, and I went, oh wow, oh wow, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. I mean, I sat there on my couch and I'm like, I just made $1 on a video. This is huge. That's the way I felt about it. And it was years later before it ever started making any kind of real money. But the day that it made $1, I was so overwhelmed. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. I finally did it. I got a product. I got it. I got something here. I could build on this. This is working. This can work. I know it can. Right? Years later, it was. It took years to get there, and it took years after that to make it anything. Right? That's a business. That's how it works. That's how business works. People who think that they could start a business up and then 3 months later just be rolling in it, driving a Mercedes or something around, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I guess there's some people out there who could probably do that. I don't know anybody who's done it that way. Most people I know who have successful businesses struggle for a while to get it up and running and going. And a lot of it was working and not getting anything for that hard work. But what they got for the hard work wasn't anything at the moment. What they got was the ability to put themselves in a position in which that they can now acquire quite a bit of an abundance in their life. That that ability, that abundance of opportunity is incredible. Like, it is so profound how much opportunity there is for you to do just about anything. It is incredible. Most people just don't see it. They don't even know it. How long do we want to do this for, guys? We got 415 people watching, 211 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button, the thumbs up button. I don't know. Should we just go for an hour and a half? I don't know. Get it up to 300 likes in the next, 7 minutes or something like that. We'll continue on. Otherwise, we'll call it quits at an hour and a half. 24-hour stream. I know. This is great, bro. Well, thank you. I mean, I mean, people say that I do good life coach kind of lessons and stuff, and I don't know about that. It's not my intentions. And I know, like, not always are your intentions what is happening. Like, there's residual things that take place from it. I'm sharing my experiences with you guys. And that's it. This is what I went through. I know that I was not on the right path. I know I was deteriorating. I know that I was going to take my family down with me if I didn't do something that was going to change. And this is what I went through. And this is how I'm sharing it with you guys. And I know not everybody can have a YouTube channel, but I worked this YouTube channel like it was a second job, or like I was starting a business or something of that nature. And so I know not everybody's going to come out and make a video to try and build up a YouTube channel, but there's something out there that you can do. You are useful. You are helpful. You are informative. You can do something out there that people want, right? And with that, you can then excel throughout this world. Understanding how it is that you position yourself for it can be very difficult for a lot of people. And if you don't know and you can't figure it out and you don't know what your purpose is, do something like volunteering. Just volunteer at first, right? Because if you give up, just give up your time, right? I'll give up my time with no expectations of a reward. I guarantee you being useful and helpful will come back to you in a reward. It may not come back immediately. It may take time, but you will find that as time goes on and your life goes on, that you will be rewarded for that effort because you are being useful and helpful. And again, being patient within this is probably the key to it all. So go and start that business. Go and volunteer. Go and find what it is that you know that you can do in this world to be useful and helpful. And I believe that if you were to do that on a consistent basis with true authentic desire, right? Like, I want to be useful and helpful. Like, I want to share this information. You know, I mean, so many people out there are like, I think to myself, I hardly ever do anything to try and charge money for this information. I have Patreon, I have a members only portion of it, but for the most part, I just give it all away. I like giving the information away. I just love giving people the ideas of what it is that they can do within their own life, their own experience, in order to better find that position or acquire that position that they're looking for. And by sharing my information, hopefully that's useful and helpful to them. We got another $10 from Bob. Thank you so much. Have a beer on me. Cheers from Argentina. Well, thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate the $10. And, you know, I don't drink alcohol, but I certainly will buy a non-alcoholic beer because there are some decent, good non-alcoholic beers out there that I do enjoy from time to time. Feds quit being a P and hit the like. All right, every economics and personal finance channel is now directing the BBB so they can underhand the new rules. Okay, I don't know what that means. All right, thank you, Brody, for being here, brother. All right, so hold on. You think rich people don't buy legislation that they don't want you to find out about? No, I didn't say that at all. No, what I am saying is that the politicians have very little responsibility when it comes to the state of the condition that we will be facing when it comes to the demise. That is 100% us. We did that ourselves, the people, right? Not the politicians. We allowed it to happen, right? We allowed it to happen. And for us to blame politicians when we allowed it to happen is just like, it's really like, I don't know. I think really you're not taking responsibility for yourself or for the condition that we have allowed this to occur in. Here, this is what it comes down to. Let's talk about how Cantillon describes it. Right? Because if he can describe it from hundreds of years ago, we can go ahead and ignore it if you want. Right? You can ignore it and say that it didn't happen, or like, yeah, he just made that stuff up, like, you know, describing it from hundreds of years ago. Okay. It is not easy to perceive the opportune time for this. He's talking about pulling money. Here, let me back it up just a little bit and make a little bit more sense. Okay. When the state has arrived at its highest point of wealth, and I always assume that comparative wealth of a state consists mainly in their respective quantities of money, it will inevitably fall back into poverty by the ordinary course of things. Right? And this is Cantillon saying it. When you have acquired a bunch of money, you can expect that you will fall back into poverty. It's the ordinary course of things. It's a natural consequence, right? Unless you try to prevent it by issuing out debt. Too great abundance of money, which gives powers to the states so long as it lasts, throws them back imperceptibly, but naturally into poverty. Thus, it would seem that when a state expands by trade and abundance of money rises the prices of land and labor, the prince or legislator ought to withdraw money from circulation, keep it for emergencies, and try to slow down its circulation by every means except compulsion and bad faith to prevent its goods from becoming too expensive and avoid the drawbacks of luxury. This is what they should do. They don't, right? They don't withdraw the money. They don't try to avoid, people from moving into luxurious experiences. They don't try to stop that from happening. Because it's a free country. You get to do whatever you want. However, it is not easy to perceive the opportune time for this, to withdraw the money, or to know when money has become more abundant than it ought to be for the good and preservation and the advantages of the state. Therefore, princes and heads of republics do not concern themselves much with this sort of knowledge and strive only to make use of the abundance of their state revenues to extend their power and to insult other countries on the most frivolous of pretexts. Does that sound familiar? I mean, do you think like Cantillon knew that they would be doing that in the future, or do you think that's just the common thing that happens with these politicians when they have access to a bunch of new money that comes in from the industrious people? I mean, do politicians make industrious people, or do industrious people make politicians? Huh? All right. I mean, you got a bunch of politicians come in and say, hey, you people sitting over there on the ground, go be industrious. Or do a bunch of industrious people become industrious, raise their power, and then a bunch of people come in and say, hey, we need to govern you? Right? That's what really happens. Right? You had to be industrious first. All things considered, working to perpetuate their glory of their reigns and administrations and into leaving monuments of their power and wealth is perhaps the best that they can do, because according to the natural course of humanity, the state must collapse on its own. They only accelerate its fall a little. Nevertheless, it seems that they should try to make their power last during their time of their own administrations. Did you hear that? They only accelerate the fall a little. It's not them doing it. It's you and your luxurious way of life. That's what's doing it. If you didn't have a luxurious way of life, we wouldn't have had the inequality taking place. If the inequality wouldn't have taken place, we wouldn't have half the issues that we have going on now. And the only way to prevent people from doing that is like a boot on the face of humanity. You can't do it. You can't stop the people from doing this. This is a natural course of things. Right? And to blame it on politicians is very naive. And I'm not trying to call you that. I'm just trying to say that there are so many underlying economic forces that are at play right now that if you would recognize them, that you would understand that the politicians are literally reacting to it. They're not causing it. And there's so much debate and probably not only philosophical debates, but then also you can get into like academic, classes and professors and school of thought and all kinds of stuff that would tell you all about how politics is in charge of economics. They are completely wrong. All right? They don't recognize the underlying economic forces, and since they don't recognize it, they will then make up whatever it is that they want to about the symptoms that they are seeing and using that as the cause for what it is that they are then recognizing, instead of understanding that there is underlying economic forces that are at play. They just don't see them. Okay. And that's unfortunate for those people. All right. Single women own more homes than single men. I see opportunity. Yeah, single women are also getting degrees at a rate that's higher than men too. Right? So I would also have to wonder, how many men, single men as opposed to single women, because I know single women are starting to become like homeowners at a rate that's faster than single men. But I wonder how many single men out there are becoming capitalists faster than the women. Right? Because I think that there's a balancing between these two: property ownership and capitalism, and capitalist. Right? Like they can cross over. These people can be the same. Property owners and capitalists can be property owners, and they can be individuals. Property owners are somewhat of a capitalist mindset anyway. But then also there's the ones who deploy capital for a return, in just that sense that they want that return. They want the capital back. They want the money back, right? Plus the interest that they got from it. So, these two different mindsets of people have very different impacts when it comes to the economy and how they deal with it. So I do wonder, like, how big of a difference there is between those two different mindsets. And the guys that get educations and good jobs are made fun of by blue-collar laboring guys that hate their jobs. They make fun of them? Huh. I don't get that one. I mean, I think that's on you, Stephen. All right. I know a few single women homeowners, and they all house poor, can't afford to fix anything in their overpriced homes. Yeah, I know a few of those, but I also know a couple of women who have acquired quite a few properties and are very successful landlords. Landladies, I guess, however you want to call it. Anyway, they've done quite well for themselves. So yeah, but I do know a couple who have purchased homes, and it's a bit of a strain on them, trying to maintain them and keep them up, and whatever. But then again, I also know some guys like that too. So it's like I don't think that's like just women. Women live longer too. Well, they do. You know, like I don't think men are really like designed to live long. They're designed to like work really, really, really hard for a while, and then that's it. Like they're kind of meant to be used up. I mean, I don't mean to, but I thinking in a primitive sense, right? Like women are like meant to live longer, take care of this, like the continuing on of the race of the being of the human, right? But men are not really meant to be like everlasting. They're only supposed to be there just long enough to be useful in the most outstanding capacity they can. After that, what point is there? There's not much of a point for them. So in like, again, I know that's kind of harsh to say it, but I'm just thinking about it in a primitive mindset. Like what would nature like really try and do? Do you need a worthless eater around, or do you need a strong, person who's going to protect and save and do all that other stuff? And do you need another person who's going to maintain that and, basically nurture and hold that all together? If you're not, serving a purpose, then nature needs to remove you. So that's why I think men were just designed to work really, really hard and get used up. It's just like, I know it's sad to say, but that's really just the case. That's why women live longer. uh, your knowledge becomes more valuable, though. Yeah, if you can be useful, right? The old wise man or whatever. Women got their houses in a divorce. I mean, that might be for a lot of them, but not like, I'm talking women are actually taking out mortgages and buying houses at a rate faster than single men are. All right. Why are we talking about this? Okay, that's what the 1% think of the 99% of feeders. Hey, Yui, hypothetically, if you could instantaneously move anywhere, all things equal, i.e., family, friends, job, come with you, where would you actually go in the U.S. for a better life than the USA, if at all? I Well, I don't know where else I would want to live but here. Like, I mean, I grew up here, so I have a network here. And if I took all my friends and family and everything else to another place, I would want to go where it's friendly, clean, um, has nice weather. And what I mean by nice weather, you mean you have to have some nice days. It doesn't have to be consistently nice weather like every single day, because I know that brings people with it, right? So I don't necessarily like a huge population of people. Like, I like people around, but I don't want to be in a dense populated area. So when I think about like my ideal location, it's here. This is it. This is where I want to be. Like, I love the weather here. 3 months out of the year, it's absolutely one of the most beautiful places you can actually ever be, right? 9 months out of the year, it rains, so most of the people just don't be here. I'd rather be someplace else where it's not raining 9 months out of the year. So I get that. I get good weather that I enjoy for the few months out of the year that I really want to enjoy them. The population is not that dense because of the weather itself. It's causing a lot of people to go, to not live here. It's clean, it's friendly, it's everything that I want. Like, I mean, if you can produce in Astoria someplace else in the world, then cool, I'd move there. But, this is where I'd like to be, because this is like what my ideal location would be. I mean, I love going and visiting other places around, but again, if you can find a place that has low crime, good 3 months of really decent weather, other times that it's not, like the rest of the year it's not populated or not densely populated, like I don't know where you can find that. All right, I want good weather 7 months out of the year, which is here in California. That's too bad. Worst state for tax. Yeah, see, now if you want 7 months of good weather, you have to pay for it, and then you have to compete for that. And that's expensive, and it's densely populated. So, I mean, not for me. I thought about relocating to Astoria. That exists out of America. I don't like, yeah. Oh, we got 270 people who have hit that like button. We still got 415 people watching. My goodness. All right. Greetings from Washington. Yeah, the Northwest is great summers. It really is, Eric. It is. Like, the Pacific Northwest is a beautiful area. Like, right now, here it is. Like, it's blue skies. It's like I don't even know what the temperature is. It's really mild. I got my hoodie on because it's not that hot. It's awesome. Apple cider vinegar helps hangovers and also not drinking. Also not drinking. Yeah, not drinking does it. All right. Is mold a problem there? Yeah, it can be. I mean, it can be a problem if you don't have good ventilation, or you have like you're not the water's not shedding away properly, or however you can have some issues with mold and stuff. Best system ever. Okay, if everybody texted a link of the show to 3 friends, we could get Simon 300K. Wayne, that is a great idea. And that's one of the best ways you can actually support the Uneducated Economist, is simply by liking the video. By liking the video, the YouTube algorithm wants to share this video with other people who are similar to the videos that you would watch. So other people who watch videos like you're watching, it will share it with those other people. By sharing the video itself, the YouTube algorithm loves that, right? Because if you're sharing it, they want to share it. And so by liking the video and sharing the video, these are two really excellent ways of supporting the Uneducated Economist, and it really doesn't take much, right? Commenting, that really helps as well, because every time you comment, the YouTube algorithm wants to share the video with other people who want to engage in the activity of commenting, which again is promoting the channel and promoting the ad revenue, which is how the YouTube channels make money, is by those ad revenues that get played. So sharing the video, liking the video, commenting on the video, and subscribing to the channel is obviously the best ways that you can support the Uneducated Economist. And of course, those super chats, they're always so greatly appreciated. Like, the idea that I even have a platform in which that somebody can send some money through a comment to me is just like, that's absolutely incredible. And to have to share that with YouTube, I don't really have a problem with that, but a lot of people do. And so there's links down in the description to places that you can tip me, whether it's a cup of coffee or want to buy me a meal like a lot of other people have done in the past. My family just absolutely gets a kick out of that because I take them out for Chinese food or ice cream or something like that. And that was something that I had never done before, you know, up until having this YouTube channel. I never really took my family out to go do anything. And going out for the Chinese food, they really like doing that. And so, again, thank you so much for all the support you have for the Uneducated Economist and everything that you have ever done. All these social media platforms that are out there, I have them, but it's hard to stay consistent. Being consistent here on YouTube is where I've been. So I really appreciate everybody who has been consistent viewers on the YouTube channel here. Uses lots of taxes, but also lots of tech, which has been very lucrative. That's what is so rich versus poor up there. Yeah, it is a huge difference up here. It's amazing. Like, it's one of the highest cost of living is here in Oregon. And that's it's surprising for me because I grew up here and it wasn't that way originally. Like, when we were a working class logging fishing community, it wasn't like that. It wasn't that hard, you know, because you're competing against the other working class individuals out there. But now it's like hospital district, remote workers, retirement community just exploding around this area, and trying to compete for real estate against those people is like, it's almost impossible from a working class position. And I honestly can say, if it wasn't for having the YouTube channel and the support of the viewers here on this YouTube channel, I wouldn't have been able to be here in this area. I would have had to leave. And I'm very thankful that I was able to stick it out here because this is my home. This is where I want to be. And, you know, thinking about how difficult it is to try and make it with what it is that I was doing at the time, man, thank you for being like, I don't know, man. I mean, I don't like thinking about it, I guess. Yeah. All right, what do we got here? Did I get another? Did I miss it? Where is it at? I think I missed another super chat in there somewhere. Oh, there it is. Lucifer, thank you so much for the 2. What do you think of Satanists and Luciferians? Okay, so to be answering that question honestly, I have this to kind of relate to. You have pleasurable experiences, you have chasing of excellence, right? So if you're chasing pleasure and you're chasing excellence, what I find from the Luciferian Satanistic mindset is that you're a pleasure-seeking individuals, right? And with this comes painful experiences. And this is a lot of the times where you find, like, the opposite side of that view is your pleasure will result in pain, right? The offering you up, you know, these enticing things that, you know, cause you to slip from the focus, right? And so, like, just to not get too deep into it, the devil causes you to do bad things where God wants you to follow the true honest things, right? And I'm not going to get into religions because I'm not a religious person. I don't go to church. I don't, you know, study the Bible. My wife, she knows a lot about the Bible, right? She knows, she went to Sunday school and all that other stuff and church all the time and was very much raised in that sort of fashion of thinking. I wasn't, but that's what I've seen, right? And so when I think about it from my own personal view and what it is that I have done that caused me to experience a lot of pain and suffering in my life, it was because of the pleasurable experiences that I was chasing, right? And that's what I find coming from that sort of mindset, where following the other sort of mindset is chasing that of excellence, which is that of being good and honest and hardworking and looking. And I'm not saying that Satanists aren't good people. I'm not trying to classify them as bad, right? But what I guess I'm getting at is that chasing of excellence is being motivated towards, you know, doing things that you know are going to be rewarded from the hard work. Like, you know, deep down inside when you are doing good and when you're doing bad, Like when I was sitting around smoking weed, playing video games, I know I wasn't doing right. When I was focused on studying and researching and trying to come up with videos, I knew I was doing the right thing. Right? I just deep down inside, you just know it. You know deep down inside when you are chasing pleasure and when you are chasing excellence. When I was chasing pleasure, it resulted in painful experiences. When I was chasing excellence, it resulted in reward. So this is what I find from these two. Can you live a life that's going to have something of pleasurable experiences constantly around you by following the ideas of Satanism or satanic worship or whatever? Maybe. You might find yourself 100% constantly surrounded with pleasurable experiences. Uh, but I know when I was trying to go down that road, it resulted in nothing but pain. That's just my, right? All right, not your problem. You are a cool dude. Well, thank you, man. Not your problem. I appreciate the $1.99. All right, GK with the $10. I meant, where else in the U.S., if at all, would you go for a favorable economy, government, or was what you were speaking regarding economic issues a worldwide problem? Thank you for what you do, Simon. GK, I think that really comes down to your skill sets and what it is that you are looking for in your experiences of life. Now, if you are a hardworking individual, like you want to be carpenter, like you want to build houses, frame houses, roof, side, do finished work, whatever it is, and you want to be in that sort of world, then you have to go to an area that is booming with new construction. Now, that's not going to be consistent across the entire nation. I know in my area right now, if you want to be in commercial, you probably could do pretty well. There's a lot of commercial jobs, but not a lot in the residential. So if you're looking to do like residential property, framing of homes, building, building custom homes or something like that, my area is a great place to be if you can find the job, but there's not a lot of it happening, right? So if you want to do that kind of work, you want to go to where a lot of that is happening so you can be involved in that. Now, if on the other hand, you want to do something that's a little bit more laid back and you want to be kind of more in like, hey, easy flow, I don't need to do a production stuff. I kind of want to like, just casually do jobs every single day and make some money and live out life. Well, I think Astoria would be a great job, great place for a handyman service, especially if you have a lot of the tools and the know-how of being able to repair a hole in drywall or just, fix a squeaky door or replace a door or closet door or something like that. And you have this sort of skill. Well, I think there's a demand for that around here, right? So again, what is it you're looking for? I mean, both of these are carpentry skills. Right? One of them is production framer who wants to build houses, custom homes, build a lot of them. Nah, maybe not in our area. I mean, we got it going on, but not like a lot of it. Right? But if you want to do repair and maintenance and handyman kind of work, well, I think there's a lot of that here. Right? I mean, we're a very old city here, and all the homes around here are in a constant state of repair. So, you know, you have to look at it for what, for what your skill set is to where it is that, I mean, this isn't going to be the same for everybody no matter where you're at. Okay. Thank you guys for all these super chats. You guys are awesome. Let me cruise down here to the bottom. We're an hour and 52 minutes. Well, we're only going to go for an hour and a half. This is how it always happens, right? I always feel like I'm going to do a short video and it ends up being hours long. All right. New housing is 400K in America. Who is buying that? The top 20% of people. Other than the USA, not in WRT, there or economy. Other than the USA, what there or WRT there or economy? I'm sorry, GK. I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. Thanks for the $2, though. All right. Orange Jesus says build a wall with $59. Do you think the pain and suffering is going to be worse and worse until the Cantillon effect restarts. Well, I don't know about the Cantillon effect restarting. I think it's just all part of the cycle, right? And so the pain getting worse and worse. What is the pain for you? Like, is the pain you trying to maintain your day job and it being enough? Yes, that's going to be a painful experience. But to me, like, I know that my day job isn't going to be enough. And so therefore, I have to take on other ideas of what it is that I'm going to do to bring in money. And to me, like right now in this day and age, it's actually pretty easy to make money outside of just doing your day job. So the painful experience that other people are going to experience, I don't feel that I'm going to experience that because of the added effort that I'm going into beyond that of my day job. Those who are reliant on their day job and don't know that they need to do something else, they are going to experience a lot of pain. And the people who teach other people that their day job should be enough, they're going to also experience a lot of pain. Because that's what's happening too, is that there's a whole group of people out there saying, nah, your day job should be enough. In fact, you should only have to work 30 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, and that should be enough. And anything more than that is an evil intent by greedy corporations to enslave you, and so don't do it. Okay, well, there's your competition. That's your competition. They're over there trying to do it for 30 hours a week. I know damn well it ain't going to happen, and so I'm going to work 40 hours a week, and I'm going to go out there and do some other side hustles, and I'm going to try and figure out some things that I can do on the internet, and that's going to be who you're going to compete with, is other people doing that. So, yeah, you're going to experience pain if you're not actively doing something to try and be on the other side of the wedge. Yeah, the pain's going to get worse. Apologies, I totally messed that comment up. To fully clarify, is there another country outside of the US that treats their people has a more favorable economy in your opinion? And again, GK, I think that really comes down to what is like a favorable economy. Like, I'm finding this to be a favorable economy because of how I position myself. I don't find this to be unfavorable, right? Now, if I was still maintaining my day job and that was it and I didn't have anything else going on, this would not be favorable. So when you say like what country can you go to find more favorable, and it was just like it's not. It's a matter of you positioning yourself in accordance to what is happening today. Do you want your day job, like a day job, a 9 to 5 job, to be enough? And you're asking what country can you go to have that sort of experience? I don't know, man. What kind of standard of living do you want? Because you could probably find places all over this world that you can work a day job and be able to maintain a house and a wife and a kids and all the stuff that you could ever possibly imagine that day job providing. But unfortunately, the house is a hut. It has a dirt floor. Your wife is, not educated in any way, shape, or form. Like it's just like I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just saying, like, what is it that you're expecting? Right? Because what I expect from my efforts is exactly what I'm getting. And I'm doing it here within this economy. And to me, it's favorable. Like, I don't find this unfavorable. I find this favorable, And so if it changes, then I need to understand what changes are going to be taking place so that I can position myself accordingly for that. But when you ask, like, is there a more favorable place to be? For what? For you to do construction? For you to retire? For you to start a business? I don't know, man. Like, I mean, what is it that's going to be favorable for you is going to be very unique. Like, I like Astoria. Some people would not be able to live here because they cannot earn enough money to live in this sort of area. And I get it. I was one of those people who was going to experience that very thing if I didn't increase my income and cut back on my expenses as much as possible in order to stay here. Right? But to me, this is favorable, right? But it's not favorable for a lot of people. It would be very unfavorable. It's all up to you. I can't control your economy, and I can't create your economy, and I can't tell you what it is that you need to do inside of your current position in order to change and make it favorable for you, because I believe that that is up entirely up to you, and nothing can be done, no matter what your location is, to make it favorable for you. If you have put out all the effort you could possibly have done and cut back on all the expenses you can possibly have done, and it's still not working for you, you're in a bad location. And I don't know where you need to move to. Don't move to Astoria, right? If you're already suffering from that. But if you got a lot of money and you got ability to make money online and you have, you know, resources and stuff like that, Astoria is an awesome place, man. It's clean, it's friendly, it's quiet, it's awesome. But it's expensive. All right, so be prepared for that. Jared, yeah, I don't trust the way anything is presented by anyone in America, to be honest. The way it was presented to you and others may, in fact, been intentionally, in my opinion. That's why I read it for myself and discuss others. If you do not, I see, go back to GK here. I see it's more down to the person himself. Bang, absolutely, GK. Everybody has to own their own economy, and that's why it's the individual themselves that must own it for themselves. You can't blame other people. Blaming politicians is the worst way to lose the ability to own this for yourself, is because you're going to blame politicians, and if they don't make the right decision, that's going to screw your world up. You need to own it, right? I guess I was wondering about where countries give you health care regardless of job, etc., like things that all people seem to want. Do all people want health care? I mean, I know that a lot of people seem to want it, and I know it's a big important issue for some people out there, but not everybody is concerned about health care. Right? Um, some people find that to be the most important thing that a country could ever possibly provide, is a house and the health care, right? And to me, like, those two things are not something that government should be involved in. They just shouldn't be. That's my personal opinion. People can, talk, discuss it all they want. But the way I see it, if you have a doctor and you have a patient, right? You got a doctor and you have a patient. And if you start putting people in the middle between that, there's no possible way you can make healthcare cheaper. The more you inject more people into that, government, administrations, insurance, all the other stuff, the more expensive it gets. There's a doctor who provides a service and there's the patient who receives the service, and you put those two as close together as possible, and that's the most efficient, best medical care that you can possibly get. All right? The more that you put middlemen in between there, the worse and the more expensive it gets. Right? Now, theorize and strategize and debate it all you want. That's the case. Is there a corporation in the middle? No, there's a corporation in the middle. This is stupid. What are you talking about? Nonsensical. There's... Okay. I think Steve is just a little angry. All right, moving on here. Lucifer, I'm not saying I'm Dallas talking about. I'm named after him in his honor for the counterculture. And Lucifer, I am not trying to badmouth, degrade, put negative tone towards or anything towards your belief systems or anything else like that. It was my honest opinion and my, honest thought about what it is that comes from pleasurable experiences, chasing excellence, and where it is that mindset is derived from and where it comes from, and at the center of the spiritual being behind it. Everybody has to put that meaning behind it for themselves, right? That was my honest reply. No, these are not good financial ideas. Steve, like, you wouldn't, I don't know what it is that you're talking about, but, I mean, you seem kind of negative and you seem very down on the channel, or at least the ideas behind it. And I haven't really read through it, so maybe I'm just taking it out of context. But if you don't like it here, you probably should find another place to be. My parents lost their life savings on healthcare, particularly nursing homes. Lesson learned, plan accordingly. Yeah, I've seen that happen too. Okay. Free medical care and social benefits in my country. At the same time, cost of living always increasing and salary stays low. Working another part-time with full-time is a requirement. Yeah, and that's probably going to end up being the case in a lot of those nations. You know, they talk about how awesome it is that you have all those medical benefits and government benefits and stuff like that, but then they don't talk about how they take all your money from you too. Um, I, Jared, is Steve needing to be blocked? I mean, uh, s Steve, listen, man, you say I have no idea, okay? And now I'm not gonna, go into the whole like idea that you being a troll just trying to get a rise out of all this other stuff, but I have proven it many times throughout the years that I not only know what I'm talking about, but then I have been also asked to speak on stage at more than, well, 3 different events, right? To share my thoughts and ideas from a working class point of view. To say that I have no idea what I'm talking about, you're basically also saying that everybody who has ever invited me to go speak at any of those presentations, any of those conferences, and the people who have, come to me and saying, dude, thank you for putting out these videos, you're basically saying that all those people have no idea of what they're talking about too. So now, Steve, I suggest that maybe this community in this group isn't for you. I think that maybe there's other groups out there that are going to be much more in line with your sort of line of thinking, which is a political view, which is coming from like the Fox News kind of group. And if you want to go and live and dwell in that sort of, wallow in misery of that sort of being, go for it, man. Because I know that what I have studied here throughout the years and the things that I have shared here on this channel are not only accurate, but probably the most accurate way of looking at it from a working class point of view, far beyond anything else that anybody else is showing you out there, because a lot of people have stuck with the narrative and believing that the monetary policy coming from the Federal Reserve has some sort of idea like hitting a 2% target. Good fun there. And that has definitely thrown people out of the the ability to then recognize what is truly taking place within the economy, because they're looking through the lens of a delusional mindset. And I have to say that's you. Okay. So if you don't agree with us and we don't agree with you, I think this conversation's coming to an end and you really need to just exit. Right. I'm not going to kick you out. You didn't say anything negative about me. At least I didn't see anything that said negative about me or anybody else. You haven't said anything hateful. So until you do that, I mean, you're welcome to stay. Just be quiet. Uh, did you go to college? You seem to be very philosophical, and I agree with most of what you say. I enjoy your channel. Well, thank you, Jim. And no, I didn't. I didn't go to college. In fact, I barely graduated high school. My entire education came from my own personal research, listening to a lot of people and asking a lot of questions. When I started researching, like I would sit there and watch TV, watch the news channels, watch CNBC, and they would speak in a way that I just was so confused by. Like I understood the definitions of the words that they were using, but I didn't understand the meaning behind anything that they were talking about. So when they were talking during the great financial crisis about mortgage-backed securities, causing the problem, I had no idea what a mortgage-backed security was. I mean, I literally paused the TV and turned it off, went over to my, computer and typed into the Google search, what's a mortgage-backed security? What's a credit default swap? What's fractional reserve banking? What is, 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 what is? And I just kept doing that over and over and over again. And I would listen relentlessly to people like Peter Schiff. Like Peter Schiff, I probably listened to more of him than any single individual person talking about the economy than anybody else. Like Peter Schiff is super influential in my understanding of what is taking place within the economy, which sounds pretty funny to hear considering that I disagree a lot with what Peter Schiff is saying. It's not his understanding of economics, it's how he shares his view of economics that has led me to believe that he is a gold salesman, and that's what he is going to push on all his information, is nothing that is going to deter you away from that of purchasing of gold. Now, understanding that I am also a salesman, I do lumber sales for a living, I recognize those tactics and I don't blame him for that. Right? Like he's a salesman. It takes one to know one. I understand what he is doing, and I don't blame him for that. But I also understand that if you are not going to recognize things like Bitcoin being a legitimate item within this economy, and just laugh at people who have purchased Bitcoin and say that they are going to lose all their money, and that is a tactic to try and sell gold, well then I'm sorry, it's a little less credible to me than just understanding the underlying economic forces for themselves that he does describe very well if you can pick them out, all right, and see them, right? So, no, I didn't go to college. I didn't study with any kind of like mentor or anything like that. I literally did this all on my own, doing a lot of research, and a lot of it came from the channel itself. And I think that's really important for a lot of people to know, is that the channel itself did a lot of the education for me. They were the ones who were like, hey, check this out. Look at these things. Here's Cantillon. Here's, bullwhip effect. Here's this. Here's those things. And as the channel was growing and I was trying to gain my understanding of it, it was literally the commenters in me attempting to find more information for videos that grew this channel and the knowledge that's within it. So thank you, I appreciate it. And I've had a lot of people who have come to me saying, man, like I had Jason Hartman over at the Rebel Capitalist when I was talking to him about the rising neutral interest rate, and he says to me at one point, he goes, I believe that you are falsely advertising this. And I looked at him because I talked about the neutral rate, and I thought he was talking about me being wrong about this rising of the neutral interest rate. And he says, you are definitely not uneducated. And I thought, man, Jason, thank you. He's such a cool guy to begin with, but to get a compliment like that was huge. And I really appreciated hearing that from him, and getting his, face to face at the Rebel Capitalist was awesome. I don't think I fully see your view on healthcare, but I'm really digging in on the research of how different healthcare systems affect economics in order to get a better grasp your view. Thanks. Yeah, GK, I really appreciate the super chat and being here in the comments and everything that you've done to support the channel so far. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me because I have a very libertarian mindset, and I'm very libertarian in view, knowing that most people do not have a good understanding of what it is to be a libertarian, because it's not well discussed out there in the political realm. Most people look at libertarians as like some crazy bunch of people who just want anarchy or something of that nature. And, although I'm sure like a great number of them probably do, my view in that sense says that things like healthcare is not anybody's responsibility but mine. Right? And that's why a libertarian mindset starts to come up when you ask about healthcare. Like, yeah, it's not my my responsibility to have other people's healthcare covered. It is my responsibility to take care of my health. It's a responsibility, so I eat right, exercise, do the right things. Even when you do that, you're not going to necessarily come out healthy. Right? Knowing that there is systems that are built in the world out there, right, of possibilities that you can buy into things like catastrophic insurance, so that if it's something beyond the sniffles, he goes into something that's catastrophic where you can't afford it, high deductible insurance. Now, this is something that could be much more prevalent out there, than then requires people to still, deal with your health, deal with your, the sniffles and the aches and pains and the, you know, whatever the issues you have, like, the smaller stuff. But then if anything major does happen, at least there's an insurance that's covered, right? And it doesn't cost you everything that, in your entire life to get it. Right? It's a possibility. I'm just saying that's a suggestion. Nobody really talks about it that way. Libertarians won't fight back, so they get overwhelmed by anyone that is willing to actually fight. I don't think so. I think most people don't attack libertarians in a way that they could actually lose, right? So they attack them in like overwhelming numbers when it comes to like debates and stuff like that. But the libertarian mindset is very much in self-protective mode. So if you attack a libertarian, you can most likely assume that you're probably not going to do very well on the outside of that, on the other side of it. But if you're attacking as a group, libertarians don't fight back in that sense, because you're not attacking us as an individual. Like, we don't feel individually harmed or threatened. And if we don't feel that as an individual, we don't feel it as a whole. And so when you're trying to attack the entire group, yeah, you can probably find that battling the entire libertarian group is a very easy thing to do, because individually they don't feel threatened by you. All right, guys, I'm losing my power here, and it's time to go anyway. I really appreciate everybody who is here for the entire live stream. I don't even know how far we went, almost over 2 hours into this. Hundreds of people watching, hundreds of likes. Thank you for all the super chats and sharing of the video. Everything you do for the Uneducated Economist, super appreciated in every way. I can never thank you enough. Links are down in the description. You let me know.